Welcome back to the Growth and Gratitude podcast, everybody. We are here for part 2, a bonus episode with my cousin, my wonderful cousin, Kristin Mallon, who we introduced you to in the last episode. So if you haven't listened to or watched that, you must go back and listen either before this episode or after this episode, because this is going to be a deep dive into support for women in menopause. And that's a long range. So even if you're a lot younger than you might think for this conversation, it's for you and it's for everyone, because even if you don't identify as a woman, you're going to be supporting women in this stage of life. So Kristin, let's do a quick introduction of you, just in case people didn't catch the first episode. Can you tell us again about your background?
Yeah, I'm Kristin Mallon. I'm a certified nurse midwife, and I've been practicing in private practice since 2006. And in 2022, with my co-founder, Michelle Westboy, we started a company called FemGevity, which is telemedicine for menopause and longevity for women.
Thank you. And Kristin has so many credentials and so many letters after her name. If you look her up, she's got so much experience and knowledge, and I'm so grateful that she's here to share it with us. So I asked Kristin in the last episode to share 3 things she's grateful for. You have to hear that because she taught us something really important with that piece. And this time around, I'm going to share 3 things I'm grateful for. And obviously, the first one I have to say is you, Kristin. I'm so grateful for you, because this is why we're here. You and your family, your wonderful 4 kids, and your husband, Kevin, who I adore, all of you came to visit us because we're on different coasts, and you and I ended up having these amazing conversations about my health and my struggles in menopause, and you taught me so much. So I'm so incredibly grateful to you. And we both said, we've got to do this on the podcast. We've got to make this available for more people. It's so important for women and people who are experiencing menopause. So I'm so grateful for you. I'm also grateful for my mom, who is a nurse, as you know, and you two speak the same language. So when you two get together, it's like, okay, wait, stop. What does that mean? And what's that term? And she joined in our conversation, and she learned so much from you as well. That made sense to her based on she had worked in a women's clinic. So now she's supporting me in new ways because of what you've taught both of us. So grateful for her, because having a mother who's a nurse has just been the biggest gift in my life, because she's been my healthcare advocate when I didn't know a lot of the things I needed to understand. And finally, I'm going to say, since we're on a professional, I'm being grateful for professional colleagues. I have so many fellow coaches in my life who help me talk through my struggles, and we coach each other. And I just think that the professional network of women, whether it's people like you who are in healthcare, whether it's all my fellow coaches, and you do a lot of coaching in your field as well, it's a different kind of coaching. I just feel really blessed to have such a strong support network of women, of powerful, highly educated, highly competent women. And you're in that circle. And I have lots of women in that circle who we just teach each other everything we're learning so that we can all be our best. So I could go on and on about that, but let's talk about menopause, Kristin, because you know a lot about it, and you know so much more, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say it bluntly, than the average healthcare professional, because they just don't get a lot of education on this. And OBGYN is a lot of the focus is on delivering babies and caring for pregnant women or people who are pregnant. We want to be inclusive in our terminology, and I noticed that you're very careful about that. And oh my goodness, as a mother of a transgender woman, I need to learn from you about how to even use inclusive terminology. But any human who is carrying a baby and delivering a baby and might be chest feeding, which I learned the term recently, needs a lot of care and support. And so OBGYNs are focused on that and surgeries, but your care has always been very, very specialized for either childbirth and pregnancy, but now you're really specializing with FemGevity in women, caring for women in menopause, just that, which was so important for me to hear, because I have not been feeling like I've been able to get the help and support that I need at this stage of life. So tell us all about providing healthcare for women in menopause, all the stages of it, and what's important to know.
Yeah, so I think you bring up a really good point that you and I had talked about before, which is that OBGYN, so I feel pretty strongly that just in general, OB/GYN should really be 2 separate specialties. I mean, we have a separate specialty for our feet, and we have something special for our rectum. And there's so much that goes into both of those fields that I really feel that they could really at some point split. And so it's no wonder that OBGYNs are kind of left not knowing a lot about menopause, and it's just sometimes an elective that they take, or they're just kind of taught like the nomenclature around it, and they're not really taught about all the different options, because it's a field in of itself. I mean, even menopause or hormone balancing for people who identify as women specifically could be its own separate field. So I think there's that right there. And then when you talked about the definition, I actually get a lot of this back on my end, because menopause really is just one day. That's the medical term for it. So it's really just the day where a woman has had 12 months of no menstrual cycle and is during the general range of 42 to 60. So that is kind of not really how we use it in common speech, because we use menopause really to kind of be this overarching term that's really describing perimenopause, which are the years leading up to that one day, and then postmenopause, which are the years after that one day. So menopause is kind of we're kind of like having a dual meaning for what menopause means specifically. And I think just in general, most people, when they think about menopause, they think about hormone replacement therapy, and that's bad. And we have to kind of ask ourselves, where did that come from? And that really came from a Women's Health Initiative study that was done by the National Institute of Health. And the findings were published in 2002. Before that, most women were on some form of hormone replacement therapy, whether it was estrogen or Premarin or Provera, and they did just fine. And actually, they thrived on it. And then when the study came out, and kind of the sequelae that happened, women got this yo-yo effect of, well, is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Is it the ultimate fountain of youth? Is it going to kill me? And now I feel like we're kind of coming to the truth. The truth is coming to the surface that no, estrogen does not cause breast cancer. Estrogen actually prevents cardiovascular decline for most women. It helps with neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's and dementia, and it helps with bone health. And so I think just that piece is something that I feel really passionate about educating women on, and also practitioners on, because so many practitioners are afraid of estrogen, and so many women are afraid of estrogen, when it's really this hormone that could be benefiting them in very, very significant ways.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Because so that study was debunked, right? I mean,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
So there's been a really great book, which I highly recommend to anyone who has any concerns about taking estrogen. The book is called Estrogen Matters, and it was written by Dr. Avram Blumring and his co-author Carol Travers. And Dr. Avram Blumring, an oncologist specializing in blood cancers. And blood cancer is kind of a very unique cancer, because it really targets across the lifespan. So this is the type of cancer that we do hear about in the pediatric population, and happens in women in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. A lot of other cancers are kind of reserved more for the later decades, not all, but we're more at risk for them as our lifespan goes on. So he was caring for women who were in their 40s or even in their late 30s, and treating them with chemotherapy for their blood cancers, and then finding out that they were going through menopause or being put into menopause from the treatments. And he was, something has to be done, like this doesn't really make any sense. And he started to research it, and he really he published his own study in 2009, and just kind of really debunked everything that happened with that WHI study. Actually, an interesting thing about this WHI study is there were 40 principal investigators on it, and 37 of them didn't read it before it went to print in JAMA.
Wow.
So anyway, yes, so he actually then had a wife get breast cancer. And so he became very passionate about educating anybody about estrogen, and not just that it's not harmful, but the benefits of estrogen.
So unfortunately, some people still think, I was going to say a lot of people, but hopefully it's just some people still are influenced by that 2002 study that was then debunked, that was very problematic, and get really scared to go on hormone replacement therapy in the menopause years. But for many, many women or people going through menopause, it can be incredibly helpful. And we need to understand the truth and the more current findings about the benefits versus the risks. And the risks have actually turned out to be, I think, very low, a lot lower than initially, believed. And also the risks are, for many of us, there are the benefits outweigh, and there don't seem to be any risks if we don't have a predisposition for certain things. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. Is that right?
Yes. And even if there is a predisposition for certain types of cancers, estrogen is actually absolutely 100% safe. And it's been proven time and time again after many, many studies. In fact, we actually used to treat breast cancer with estrogen before tamoxifen came out. So we know we have a lot of information and a lot of data about the safety of estrogen. And there's a lot of different types of estrogen too. So it's not just one type of estrogen. There's usually 3 different types that are kind of used in replacement or in supplementation of women who are going through or experiencing menopause. And not all apples are the same when it comes to this type of treatment as well.
Exactly. So since we're talking about the treatment, maybe we should back up a little and talk about the symptoms. Because if we're talking about, well, this is something you really should consider doing, of course you have to seek counsel from healthcare professionals. But what we are saying, I think, is your OBGYN might not have the most current information and might not be trained or able to provide the kind of specialized care you need in figuring out what kind of hormone treatment you might want to consider. But why is it so important to make sure that we do know that it's probably safer than people are telling us, and that it might be really, the benefits might outweigh the risk? Because the symptoms can be brutal, people.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the symptoms can be misdiagnosed, and they can, I think even people experiencing menopause themselves can kind of not put 2 and 2 together that that's actually what they're experiencing. And we see this in other ways with women too, for cardiovascular disease. So women who are experiencing chronic cardiovascular disease, a man will sometimes present with the left shoulder pain, radiates down the arm, numbness and tingling in the jaw. And a woman might present with some sort of upset stomach. And then it's missed because the symptoms aren't really the same. And so that's happening in menopause too. And I think that the number one way that that's happening is with mental health. So as women go through perimenopause, we actually see a reduction in progesterone, the progesterone hormone, first before we see significant changes in estrogen. And sometimes the loss of this progesterone will lead to symptoms as early as the 30s even. So women will start to experience, well, I have premenstrual mood disorder, or I have PMS, or I'm fighting with my spouse, or I'm more irritable, or I'm angry. And that's all kind of related. It can be related to the loss of progesterone that kind of starts around 35.
So this is not just for those of us in our 50s. This can all start in your 30s.
Yeah. And a lot of times with perimenopause specifically, so the perimenopausal symptoms can start in the late 30s and into the 40s. The sooner you kind of seek treatment, the easier it is to kind of gently land your plane, so to speak.
I love that analogy. Can you give us that analogy, the crashing the plane versus gently landing the plane?
Yeah. So, you want to like fly your nice 747 and just have a nice touchdown versus kind of like coming in at a weird angle and like hitting the ground and then kind of having like disruption, and like you make it to the end of the runway and you land in the grass and kind of thing. So that's why I really love to work with women that are in the perimenopausal time too, because they're not always putting 2 and 2 together. Progesterone can affect sleep very significantly. Lack of progesterone can affect sleep. And then sleep has, of course, this like very significant sequelae with brain fog and memory loss, and along with mood changes. And then sometimes women don't understand that those things are going together. So it's not just hot flashes. It's a lot of other things that really affect every single system. I mean, from head to toe. You can talk about hair thinning. You can talk about dry eyes. You can talk about changes in the skin, more wrinkly kind of textured skin. Sometimes women will even experience palpitations from the loss of progesterone, not just estrogen. There can be gastrointestinal changes because of the way we synthesize estrogen in the gut and the way that we utilize cholesterol. So all of that is kind of, and the way we absorb our food can affect our hormones, and on through every single system. Somebody classified the menopause symptoms one time as having over 100 symptoms, and I don't think that's wrong.
I sure wish that Well, I can't wish that things were different, but it would be interesting to think if I had known these things, because I did the crash landing. I didn't pay any attention to my hormones until I was in my 50s. And then I
Yeah.
felt the plane crash. I had so many symptoms. For me, I had the hot flashes were incredible. Like I could not believe, and night sweats and insomnia and brain fog and mood irritability, so many of the typical things now that I now know, but it came on very suddenly and had my estrogen tested, and it showed that it had dropped very low in a very short period. So trying to then balance that when I was crashing really with a lot of the symptoms. But yeah, I mean, gut issues and definitely emotional health and mental health were very much affected. And I really had never thought about that, and I hadn't been expecting that. And so the trying to overcorrect and then figure out what do I do was kind of a painful experience, and it's gotten a lot better. And I still had the belief that like, oh, I need to go natural, and I'm this natural healthy person, and I'm eat healthy, and I'm not going to do any kind of hormone replacement, until it just became intolerable. And then I started finding out some of the research that you're talking about, that I had no risks, that the benefits were actually, I finally had to have an OBGYN explain to me, oh, no, you need to, this is really bad for you to have such a quick, huge drop in your estrogen and progesterone. You need to replace it, and that's going to prevent a lot of health challenges that could come up for you and help you with bone density and all of these things. So that's what I went through. And now I'm learning so much more, and having tried to take charge and get the healthcare. But I think the bottom line is that pay attention early, get help from someone like Kristin and professionals who really specialize in this stage of life, which actually starts in your 30s. So notice symptoms, notice signs, be on the lookout. It's not just the traditional things that we think it is. It's so many more that might be related. And there you can get help, you can get support. And there are people who, like Kristin, who will listen. One of the things about having conversations with Kristin is, boy, you just listened to me for like hours. I think, I don't know what, the kids were like playing with my dad and and I felt like I was taking advantage, because you really listen to all the things, and you help me see the connections between things. And I don't want people to think we're getting too alternative, but I have had health challenges that were totally inexplicable. It doesn't make any sense. Why do I have high cholesterol? I'm like practically a vegan. I'm low weight. And maybe there's actually a connection there that could be. So you help me see,
Yeah,
like, all
absolutely.
these systems are connected, and there's actually some research on that. So we don't want to lose people and have them be like, oh, this is crazy talk. But I feel now, like, at least, a lot of things that seemed like not connected and they couldn't be explained through any kind of traditional medicine, maybe there are connections between some of these things. And if I get this piece managed better to where I'm thriving and feeling better, it could actually really improve a lot of other things that nobody ever told me were connected. What do you think,
Yeah,
Kristin?
absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we didn't even touch on is the sexual changes and the vaginal changes that also come along with this time in a woman's life. And so I always encourage a woman who's really like 30, like 37 plus, that's experiencing a new symptom, that they don't feel right, something's off, something's going on in their sex life, something's going on. The night sweats that you mentioned, that's a really common symptom that's just kind of like brushed off by a lot of OBGYNs. To seek out someone who mentions that they are a specialist in menopause. And I want to say one really kind of small thing about that is we do have a certification organization called the North American Menopause Society. But this society, they're great. And you can seek out a North American Menopause Society trained practitioner, which might be a good place for someone to start if they kind of feel lost about where to go. But a lot of what's going on now with NAMS, it's called NAMS or NOMS, some people call it NOMS, is it's not kind of keeping up fast enough with what's actually happening in terms of what's the difference between the pharmacological options that we have, the bioidentical options that we have, and the over-the-counter supplemental diet changes that we have. So they have a lot of red tape in a good way. They want to make sure that they're recommending things that are 100% above board, but they're also not able to go as fast as I think this field is changing. And if you've been a person who's been told you don't feel right, you're having night sweats, you're having sexual changes, mood changes, and your OBGYN runs your hormone levels and they're like, oh, everything's fine. I would just really encourage you to get a second opinion from someone like myself who specializes in menopause, mentions it on their website, shows evidence of additional training so that they can take a look at what was tested and match it up with your symptoms and kind of like where you fall and what we would expect based on your age and symptoms, and have them kind of give you a second opinion about what you're experiencing.
Really good advice. And I want to say, we should say we're not giving you medical advice, listeners. We're giving you options. We're making recommendations to get good advice and to get multiple perspectives. But one of the things I hear in what you're saying and what you really helped kind of help me have a paradigm shift with is, first of all, the personalized care. Like, it's not one size fits all. And it's about balancing the hormones, which is going to be different for each woman. So I just kind of, and what a lot of OBGYNs just throw hormones at you. If you're willing to go on hormones and you're having all these terrible symptoms, like, just start taking these hormones. But I'm still in the process, everybody, of figuring it all out and trying to get myself balanced. Is Kristin helped me understand it's not just taking a bunch of hormones. It's like making sure that it's the right balance and that it's the right hormone for the right symptoms, and that you're then looking at all the others. So I'm really in the beginning of this process of now wanting to do a lot more precision testing, as you talked about, to find out what really are the imbalances. And so, was I taking too much estrogen, not enough progesterone? Still, for me, I kept taking more hormones of certain types, and certain symptoms were going away and other symptoms were not going away. So it's very nuanced, and it needs a lot of attention and care and listening and paying attention to all the symptoms and all the systems of the body and how they're being impacted. So we're not just saying, oh, go and get hormones. Like, it's much more complicated than that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because internally in FemGevity, we call them patch pushers. So there's some companies and also some OBGYNs or internists even who you go and they really only give you one option. And so I think that's also something to kind of just be wary of. If someone's not going to listen to you and say, okay, like, here's 3 options. Maybe you don't need all 27 options that are available on the market today, but someone who could kind of listen to like what your concerns are, what you're comfortable with, and say, here are your 3 options. And then what you mentioned about the precision medicine testing is that using precision medicine actually will let you lean on your strengths. So you might be like a good metabolizer or a certain supplement or a certain food. And also you might have a certain supplement or a certain food or a certain type of pharmacologic or bioidentical that's inhibiting other parts. And so that's what's really cool about using that very customized, very precision medicine, which unfortunately is not covered by insurance yet, but there's always hope. That will be that we can use that to really tailor your treatment to be really, really specific, because we're at FemGevity, what Michelle and I co-founded together is we really want to give our patients the least amount of medication that they actually need to make them feel really good and optimize their health.
I love that. Yeah. So it is definitely not one size fits all.
No.
And it also is not, if, oh, here I have these symptoms, okay, this is the solution for that. No, we need to ask a lot more questions. We need to do testing. We need to really find out that this is going to be the right solution for you. And I'm curious, Kristin, I have a lot of friends, obviously, in this stage of life, and some of them have been told, you just can't go on hormones. It's not an option for you. And now what I'm learning from you is that may or may not be true. They may not be aware of the risks and benefits, in the most current research on that. But if a woman is going that route and is not going to take any hormones, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so that's where I would definitely recommend getting the precision medicine done, because that's where you're going to be able to see how you can naturally enhance your body's ability to make these hormones on their own. What you can do, like the tools and tricks and tips to support your body, what natural supplements, like whether it be soy or cohosh, that's going to help support you as best as possible.
Thank you for that. So when we left out, this is funny, everybody, because Kristin and I literally talked for hours about menopause, and it just blew my mind. There were times I was like, okay, I have to like take a break and think about this. But you were just up for it the whole time you came to visit. And I'm so grateful for that. I learned so much. So what have we left out, if anything, that would be important for really women who identifies women or men, everybody who either is going to or is experiencing menopause, or who wants to better understand, like, I'm going to make sure that Neil, my husband, listens to this. I've been trying to explain things to him, but this is a really good one to share if you can relate to some of the symptoms we've been talking about and the struggles with finding the right support and the right treatment. So what else is there that you can share that would be helpful for everybody out there?
Yeah, I think like in general, we found that women are really kind of interested in what we're doing in terms of longevity and the optimization of health when their reproduction longevity is coming to its kind of last stages. And that's different for every woman. That happens sometimes when you're 20 and sometimes when you're 50. And so once that reproductive time is kind of ended or over, then I would really encourage you to consider getting, even if you feel great and you feel amazing, then get a baseline hormone panel done and see where you are, where you feel really good. And then check in with someone regularly, probably every year, so that you can start to kind of catch symptoms before they start. And then really read Estrogen Matters, or really do your research about what the truth is about certain hormones like estrogen and progesterone. And we also use things like testosterone and DHEA and pregnenolone. So the more you can kind of get a lot of understanding about all of those different things, the more you might understand how they actually really enhance longevity. And so we always kind of say at FemGevity, always like, the way a woman goes through menopause affects how her brain and her body and her heart is going to function, feel in her 60s and 70s.
Thank you. So get the care you need. Take full advantage of your insurance, your healthcare. We talked about that in the last episode. And then whatever needs they're not meeting, if you have the means, try to get additional support for these kinds of concerns, because it's so important. You want to have a long life, of a healthy life with a high quality of life, not just longevity. So that's what we're talking about here. So Kristin, where can people find you? I'm sure people want to hear more from you, learn more from you. What are you doing out there?
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions too on social. So I can be reached pretty easily on Instagram, just at FemGevity. And then we have our website, which is www.femgevityhealth.com. We have a LinkedIn page. I'm on LinkedIn also, Kristin Mallon, and all the other socials we use at FemGevity. So it's like Facebook and TikTok and all of those fun social media channels.
Great. I don't know how you do it all. So Kristin, by the way, has 4 kids. And she's doing, and is the most loving, fun, wonderful mom with her kids, and married, happily married. And it's just lovely to see such a strong, powerful, intelligent, educated, knowledgeable woman kind of doing it all. I'm sure it's challenging at times, but and really focusing on your personal growth and your spiritual growth and development. And we've had some really incredible conversations about that as well. So I just want to call that out, because I think as women, a lot of us feel like, oh, it's all too much. I don't know how I can do it all. But if we feel good and we're taking care of our health and we're making sure our needs are met and we're asking the right questions of the right people and getting the right kind of support, we really can do a lot more than we might think.
Yeah, especially with sleep. So that's, right there, that would be like one takeaway is, even consider seeing someone who can help you with that. And that's definitely something we help women with. Almost every consult, we're helping women with sleep.
Absolutely. And you have helped me with that. I won't say, but you made a recommendation for me to change my medications, and I tried it, and that has helped tremendously with sleep, with getting better sleep. And I had no idea that it was my hormone imbalance that was really preventing me from getting a good night's sleep. And I have been since you taught me that. So we cannot say enough about how important this all is. And we all know how important a good night of sleep is. So thank you, Kristin. Yes. Thank you for this little intro to all that you can offer and teach. And I hope people will go find you and check you out. And also, I hope that everybody out there will go out and make sure that you are advocating for yourself and getting the quality of healthcare that you need, especially for those who are in or are going to be in menopause. This is a time where you need to take good care of yourself and be an advocate for your own health and get the support that you deserve, which is the kind of support, custom and personalized and compassionate, that and incredibly knowledge-based and evidence-based, that Kristin provides.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bridget. Thanks for having me on your show.
My pleasure. Great conversation. And bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.